It's good so far.
Okay, let's talk about what to do. If you say you're a business, then operate in a business-like manner. Meaning, keep good records, get professional help, that's what you're getting tonight. Seek advice, maybe if you really want to prepare your own tax return, fine, but get it looked at every 3 years, I always recommend. Why every 3 years? Anybody know what's magic about 3 years with the IRS?
Set the statute of limitations.
That's how far they can go back and audit you. 3 years. 7 if they think that there's some fraud, okay, or undeclared income. But 3 years. So every 3 years, go take your tax return that you've prepared yourself to a professional. Please don't do it during tax season. Do it before or after. Say, did I do it right? All right, I will tell you a story. It's in the book. I changed the name to protect my dear friend. I think I called her Larry. She's really a Linda. Anyway, poor Linda was preparing her own tax return for 3 years, and she was writing, and she was a business, and she was quite successful. She had a very successful history curriculum that was selling well. She was selling on her own, and she was making money from the royalties. And she calls me one day, and she said, I went to see the IRS today. What do you mean you went to see the IRS? Well, they called me downtown Cincinnati for a face-to-face IRS audit. And I said, you went? Yeah, I've got nothing to hide. I'm an honest person. So she and her husband went down there. The IRS is grueling when they are doing a face-to-face audit with you. They ask extremely personal questions like, what's your level of education? What kind of car do you drive? What kind of house? Well, they already actually know what kind of house you live in because they looked it up on Google. And they know what you paid for it, and they know what property taxes you pay. Very personal questions. And she felt like I have nothing to hide. But the problem was she had taken business use of the home, perfectly legitimate business deduction for an author to take. But her husband was a minister, and he took the minister's housing allowance. Red flags, double counting something in the IRS's eyes. If she had come to me and had me look at her tax return, I would have said, Linda, you can't do that. So they called her in, not just, the IRS has different levels of audits. The least, this is bad English, the least worst kind. What's better English than that? I'm not going to call it the best audit. The least worst audit is just paper. They'll mail you a letter and they ask for something, you reply by paper. This was a face-to-face audit. The worst kind is when they come to your place of business. But poor Linda. So I said, Linda, you're not going back. You went in there alone without any representation. You are an honest person. You have nothing to hide, but that's not what the IRS cares about. They don't know you. So another CPA who's more experienced in audits and I went in together. I knew Linda, so I knew her background, and the other CPA knew the audit process. So I got to tag along, and it was a very interesting, eye-opening experience. I wrote up in my blog about it. She ended up basically losing her case with the IRS. She ended up owing quite a bit of money to them. She had to borrow money from her family to pay the IRS, and all because she had made an honest mistake. But the IRS is not forgiving. They're not forgiving. She owed the money. She agreed. All right. So that's why I say get some advice. Operate in a business-like manner, but get some advice if you're going to perform your own tax return. Keep a submission log of evidence that you are trying to make an attempt at doing this. If you are submitting things to magazines, I submitted to these magazines. I got rejected by these magazines. But if you keep a submission log, and I got that little tidbit from a man who used to be an IRS field agent. He was the kind of guy who went to people's businesses. He worked for the IRS for 6 years. And he did a workshop at the Midwest Writers Workshop in Muncie this summer. I was taking notes like crazy. Not often you get to sit down with somebody who used to work for the IRS, but that's what he said. Keep a log as evidence of your work to prove that you are a business. Even if some years you don't have money, you're still a business because you're still attempting it. And we know writing's not easy. It's not that many people. And if you had true losses, take those true losses. Don't be afraid to take a legitimate business deduction even if you didn't have a lot of income. Okay? How about about if you really are a hobby writer? Well, then be prepared to, here's Uncle Sam taking your money and saying, sayonara. Be prepared to pay your Uncle Sam. You saw how it worked on the tax return. You're supposed to report every dollar of hobby income you make, even if you don't get to deduct the expenses. Don't expect any tax deductions. I put parenthetically, well, maybe if you're a hobby writer, then just be a hobby writer. Don't make money. If someone wants to pay you, don't take it. Or maybe you take it and donate it, so at least it's kind of a wash on the tax return to a point. Okay? And just enjoy your writing for pleasure. Be an honest hobbyist, but don't try to make money at it unless you're ready to call yourself a business.